Now it is my pleasure to also introduce our award winner of the Human Security Award. The Human Security Award honors a Fletcher alum who's contributing through their work in unique ways to promoting human security through either research or practice. And it's my pleasure to introduce this year's recipient of the Human Security Award, Ms. Tsering Gellek. Tsering is the director of the Sarnath International Nyingma Institute in India. As she will describe, her work focuses on Buddhist cultural preservation throughout Asia. This reward reflects our view that preservation of cultural heritage is an important part of human security, to it in acknowledging the cultural touchstones of individual and group identity and dignity, which are so important to the human security agenda. Tsering's work also seeks to bridge Eastern and Western traditions, introducing Buddhist monks to the study of human rights, democracy, and environmental issues. Inherent in this educational work is a commitment to tolerance and global engagement as a counterpoint to religious extremism. Tsering's amazing work reminds us of the incredible diversity of the Fletcher community, whose graduates follow many paths, but share values of inclusion, respect for cultural differences, while aspiring to universal practices of human rights and global stewardship. Tsering, it's a great, great pleasure for me to present you with this year's Human Security Award. Secret notes. Okay. Wow. Thank you. It's been 17 years since I was a student at Fletcher, and this moment here gives me a chance to think back to what I have been up to since I left. And right after I graduated from Fletcher in 2000, I thought, well, I've worked pretty hard, and I thought critically and wrote a lot while I was in school, so why not go to Brookline and work at a bed and breakfast? So it was only 3 weeks into that excursion with putting chocolates under or maybe on top of the fluffy pillows that I thought, maybe I'm not using my master's degree of law and diplomacy to its fullest. And then suddenly, my thesis advisor, Professor Karen Jacobson, invited me to apply to serve as a project manager to her newly formed Alchemy project. And its aims were really ambitious. It was to transform the lives of refugees and conflict-affected persons in Africa by increasing their access to grants and microcredit. And so for the next 2 years, we researched the impact of credit on refugees by providing grants to innovative organizations working in the field. And our research would underpin the growing body of literature on the power of supporting livelihoods in conflict-affected zones, and in turn, its enhancement in human security. So my studies and work were now more in alignment, and I felt I was on the right track. But then September 11th happened, and I was at the Feinstein International Center that day. And I clearly remember Karen's response, which was really something very memorable. And she said something about not giving in to fear. And she said she wasn't going to change her upcoming travel plans. And that simple act of doing something in a way normal in an extraordinary time was something that has stayed with me actually throughout my life. So responding and transforming adversity, my father is a Tibetan Lama and a refugee himself. He has dedicated his entire life to cultural preservation and world peace. For the past 50 years, he has led a global publishing effort to endow and rebuild over 3,000 Tibetan Buddhist libraries throughout the Himalayas. For Tibetan Buddhist culture, these monastic libraries were not only the center of Tibetan life, but the custodians of treasure house of the collective wisdom of Buddhist civilization. As part of these efforts in cultural preservation, I traveled throughout India and Nepal, and I worked on peace bells and Buddhist sacred sites as monuments of peace. And this work brought me into the circles of ministries of culture and archaeology and to the religious communities surrounding those sacred sites. And I called upon my negotiating skills that I had learned in Professor Eileen Babbitt's course and was able to win a landmark agreement on striking the delicate balance between conservation of historic sites and honoring them as places of worship, or what is known as living monuments. And so this work would provide the stage for what would later be my most challenging undertaking. And in 2008, I was asked to lead the renovation of Nepal's oldest monument, the Swayambhu Stupa. In Sanskrit, Swayambhu means essentially self-arisen. And so the stupa is considered to be the beginning of the Kathmandu Valley. And there have been 14 major renovations prior to this one, occurring about once every 100 years. And I would be the first woman to undertake this work in its over 2,000-year history. But this was not the most challenging aspect, and not one that I paid much attention to, at least not while I was working. So I led this effort during a time of major political transition in Nepal, including the dissolution of the government, and I was working in a nearly failed state. But there remained a cultural fabric that held community and families together that was far more powerful than I had ever imagined. And the sense of social capital, the tightness of community, equally weighed at times against the exclusion of others through, for example, the tightly guarded secrets surrounding the rites of renovation. All of this was within the context of a mess of dysfunctional bureaucracies, and these were new aspects of relationships that I had not experienced really before. But in the end, we became an incredible team of over 70 national artists, hundreds of Newari priests and Buddhist monks, and we worked very hard for 2 years and completed the entire renovation of the Swayambhu Stupa with the offering of over 23 kilos of gold and I think 30,000 pieces of art restored. The work we did on supporting the internal structure of the stupa helped to prevent its collapse, unlike nearly all of the other mini monuments damaged in Nepal's most recent and devastating earthquake in April 2015. But after the Swayambhu Stupa renovation, I took a little time to rest, and I worked on documenting this process in a large book, which I just gave to Eileen. And then my sister made a documentary film on the same. And for me, finishing Swayambhu Stupa was something like summiting Mount Everest, and there was simply no project that I felt would be bigger than that. And so I really felt a strange mixture of both accomplishment and emptiness. And so the void, I would say, almost grew for a year, and then I was asked to go back to India. And since 2011, I've been working every year for 7 months at a time in a small town in northern India called Sarnath, where the Buddha first gave his teachings over 2,500 years ago. And Sarnath is just located outside one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities called Varanasi. And if you arrive at the train station and are taken by taxi or auto rickshaw, the driver will most likely say to you with a very friendly voice, "Welcome to Varanasi. This is the city that people come to die." So I do live in a place where death is visible. Corpses are carried daily to the Ganges River to be cremated. The cause of death may not be war or direct conflict, but the constant reminder of death is a powerful backdrop to learning to appreciate your life, your freedoms, and your possibilities, and I would say your security. My work at the Sarnath Institute in India is to help build bridges between not only people and institutions, but in some ways between periods of time, between what makes tradition, religion, and culture, or the roots of society, support the possibility of adapting to the present moment, and more importantly, to a better future. These linkages and bridges, I believe, are deeply connected to actualizing a sense of purpose in life. This sense of purpose is a treasure that human beings are uniquely endowed with, and I believe the heart of human security. A couple of years ago, I hosted a seminar at the Institute with the Tibetan monks in residence and a visiting anthropologist, whose better half is right here in front of me. And we were discussing the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and in the passage on the right to marry, the monks debated amongst themselves whether people had the right to marry who they wanted. And interestingly, nearly all the monks took the perspective that people should marry who their parents wanted them to marry. Then one monk in his 50s, who had faced incredible hardship in Tibet, raised his hand and offered this. And he said, "Love is karma." And in those 3 words, he had managed to simply bridge many worlds. And I live in a place where if I look over my walls, I see my neighbors drying herbs, tending to their buffalo, and yes, burning garbage. And within the campus are Tibetan Buddhist monks learning English so that they can be the carriers of an ancient system of looking at the mind and understanding the root cause of suffering. In the Dharma, the root cause of suffering is attachment. And when I ask the monks about the real problems of the world, environment, war, conflict, racism, they hold steady that the whole system of life is governed by various forms of desire. What about the basic needs, food and security, education, and so forth, that are vital to life and not necessarily about desire or attachment, I have asked. But again, I met with this call to look deeper at how self-interest often narrows the possibilities of others. This call for looking more deeply at our motivation and actions in the world, to look at the consequences of them, is no longer something relegated to the spiritual or religious pundits. To be wise and deeply humane at these times is not just a lofty ideal, but the basis for peace and the survival of this world. We must recognize that there is indeed a cumulative effect of our individual actions, our words, and our thoughts, and that while the basis of suffering may be attachment, the basis of compassion is an understanding that all beings want to be happy. At a time where difference between cultures and views are more often the basis for conflict than respect, it seems to me that the seemingly simple act of connecting across fields, across cultures and viewpoints is really important. Often people see tradition and modern life at odds, streams moving in opposite directions, if you will. My work in education has brought an appreciation for these sometimes divergent streams, for the truths and the restraints they contain, but to also celebrate the moments when they connect, and perhaps most importantly, demonstrate our shared future. These connections have profound implications for our humanity, and it is really an honor to be a part of this distinguished group of bridge builders. I would like to thank the university, the Leir Foundation, and of course all of my professors and community for their leadership in supporting peace and nonviolence in the world. I have often felt like I did not fit the normal profile of what a successful Fletcher graduate looks like, but the truth is I believe the degree has served me very well. A small testament to the profound impact that Fletcher has had on me is that I, a lady living in a small Indian town thousands of miles away, not quite tending buffalo, but something like that finds a way to fit into this community and to keep on building bridges. And that, I must say, is something to be very grateful for, and I believe a hallmark of the university's commitment to diversity and inclusivity. So thank you. Thank you. What I'm going to show you now is a 1-minute, I think, trailer of a film that my sister made and is on PBS. It's called Light of the Valley, and followed by some images from the Institute. I sincerely say this to this entire room. I welcome you all to the city where you can come to die, but I also welcome you to join us in any way. And thank you again, all of you. I deeply appreciate your being here. Thank you. When I came to Swayambhu, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And when you're standing in front of a sacred monument, you can feel something different is there.
Swayambhu was in need of repair. There was cracks, there was dents, and pieces had fallen off or had been stolen or were missing. If somebody wanted to come and restore the Statue of Liberty, you'd want to know what their credentials were, what qualified them for doing such an important work.
What I can do is bring the best people together during the course of our renovation. The Newars craftspeople, their hands are like poets. There are many places around the world which are sacred sites. If they are not marked or kept up and maintained, they are lost. Swayambhu is one of the most holy places in the Buddhist world. This is the library at the Institute, and in the red is my father on the picture. Karen said this is my husband, but that's not quite correct. He's a friend. Students from the Institute discussing how do you listen to silence. This is a group of teachers from all the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism discussing the future of monastic education. Pilgrims from Tibet receiving a prayer wheel. The middle is the principal, the person who said love is karma. A science program with the monks learning how to plot data of their size of their feet. And the inside temple hall of, depicting the life of the Buddha and the sacred trees of India. This is the library and the text that my father's produced. Our campus. One of our English teachers. And here we are praying for peace. The Ganges, Varanasi. And finally, a lotus in a small pond next to our temple.
Well, congratulations, and this is why I went to Fletcher, frankly, is to see this incredible diversity, this lightness of spirit, this investment both in the past that walks us relentlessly into a better future. Well done and congratulations. Join me in a round of applause again for the Leir classroom.